first thing I'm curious about is, what was step number one for you? What did you feel like you had to do when you heard the news initially? What was that, okay, now it's on me to do what?
I guess, when it came out that I was interim, the first thing I wanted to do was just connect with the girls, let them know, hey, I'm with you guys on this. I know this is a weird time. I know you weren't expecting it. And on top of that, quarantine as well. So there were just a lot of emotions running high, but I really just wanted to make sure that the girls were good and that we were all in this together and ready to kind of continue to move forward, getting better this spring, whether, you're working out at home or hitting a ball against a wall. This summer, working out hard with Ed's workouts. And then this fall as well, just getting ready to come in and compete.
What is that process for you all? What did you determine was the right way to address the situation and then figure out what the immediate future would be like, even though you couldn't meet with them in a locker room and talk about everything?
Yeah. So I guess really, I needed to see, what do you have at home? Like, what are your goals that you want to meet as well? So even though you don't have Coach Smith's 45-pound weights, you do have a dog that you can put on your shoulders, or, a book bag full of things. So just kind of making sure that everybody had things that they could work on to get better. So that was kind of the initial first step.
So when you think about this position that you're currently in, a year ago you were graduating from college. And now you're in this particular position. What did you learn from your time, under Coach Ellinger and being in just that different role? I mean, you're still at a college, but you're at a different college. You are in a coaching role, not a playing role. What are the things that you believe you learned that have helped you transition to this position in what looks like from the outside pretty seamless way?
Coach Ellinger taught me so much in this first year. And I mean, it wasn't even a year, actually, a whole calendar year. But in those few months that we had together, she taught me so much. She was able to kind of show me the ins and outs of, how to plan a practice strategically and how to communicate with the girls. And even, what's the best way to get food orders and send them before you head out on a road match. And really just how to connect with people. I think overall, especially in this small but big volleyball world, she was able to go with me on recruiting events and introduce me to all these kinds of people that will help me along the way, that I look forward to connecting with again and kind of helping in the future. So she just helped me a tremendous amount.
I do also want to take the time to spotlight you a little bit in terms of, you've been an assistant for less than a calendar year, like you said. Not many people know much about you. So I'm curious to know a little bit about the player Hannah, the coach Hannah, the quarantine Hannah, all of those things combined. So my first question would be, what was your biggest challenge on going from a player to a coach?
I would say missing the game and being on the court and being able to, I guess, say, I'll just jump in and do this. I'll just jump in and show you how to do it. Where, as a coach, that's just not respectful in one way to be like, here, I can do it for you. My playing days are over. But I think that was the hardest part. And also transitioning to like, they don't understand this concept. But I've understood this concept for 4 years or even longer. So how do I kind of put that in a teaching, like how am I able to teach that to them and kind of break it down? That was probably the hardest because you kind of just expect people to read your mind and understand what you're saying. And so breaking it down has definitely been a really big learning opportunity. And I think I've been able to transition it well, but it's taken a lot of practice. So,
well, and in addition to that, you decided to do your coaching from a different school,
Yes.
Leaving Wingate and coming here. When you decided to make that decision and you came and you started to meet the girls, did you think that it was easier than maybe expected to talk with them because of how close in age you were, even though you didn't know them previously? Or was that still something that naturally people would think is a challenge? Was that the case for you?
I wouldn't say that it was a challenge, but it was just different. And in a way, so, I am 22, about to be 23. And I came in and the girls, I guess, didn't really understand my age. I think they saw me as being 25, 26. And up until, the spring, I don't think that they actually knew how old I was. I remember I was at a basketball game and I mentioned something like, oh, I'm 22, like yada, yada, yada. And one of the girls was like, you're 22? I said, yes. They were like, I thought you were 26. So I was like, ooh. I don't know if that's a compliment or not. But
could be. I mean, you're 26 in your maturity.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's what she meant.
That's what you meant. But it was different. And I think it was also just different being a coaching figure. And I wasn't a player anymore. I couldn't, go in the locker room and joke around like I could with my other teammates and things like that. So it was different, but it's been a good transition, I think.
Just curious, about the things that you enjoy. I'd love to know what everyone else should be watching or listening to right now. In your opinion, what's that one thing you're like, man, if you have time, you should check this out?
That's tough. I'm really big into documentaries. So HBO had one, and it was called McMillions.
Oh, yes. I've seen the trailer for that.
It is very good. I really enjoyed it. That was actually a little bit before quarantine started, but I carried it over into quarantine.
Not to interrupt, but even though I'm going to interrupt.
You're good.
Do you remember that? Do you remember those games
yes,
when growing
I do.
up?
Yes.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yes, exactly.
No one ever knew. And again, I haven't seen it. I know what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
But to think that, I was craving it. It's like, oh, I want the Monopoly pieces, Mom. I want free nuggets or something.
Exactly.
And realize that all of that was one big scam.
It blew my mind because I remember thinking one day, like, oh, I wonder when Monopoly is going to come back.
Yeah.
It hasn't been around for a while. I haven't seen Monopoly in McDonald's, and turns out, well, people were stealing millions of dollars.
Yeah, that usually ends things like that, and for the record as well, it's the only Monopoly I want to play. I do not like regular Monopoly. It takes too long. I'm too impatient.
You don't like the credit card Monopoly? That's one of my favorites.
I don't even know that.
I don't know.
I've only played the classic one.
But,
I'm a little bit older than you, so maybe
True.
That wasn't. By the time that came out, I had moved on to like Fat Farm shoes and
I got you.
Trying to wear my Timbs. It was really cool. That's what I was into.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people can look at me and say, yeah, definitely I can see Joe being into flat brim hats sideways. That's definitely his thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you. Enough about me. So McMillions, definitely a thing. Documentaries in general.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were talking about audio kind of series, documentaries as well. I know you mentioned Serial, which is something a lot of people talk about. What else? What else is out there?
Podcasts, that's kind of what I do as soon as I wake up. I listen to The Daily every morning. I've had to kind of turn it off lately, limit my news time. But I listen to The Daily every morning. I listen to Crime Junkie. I'm a big true crime podcast kind of girl. I also listen to kind of documentary podcasts as well. So like I was telling you, my new one is Floodlines. It's about the Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath of it. So I really just enjoy podcasts in general. So if I'm in the car anywhere, that's pretty much what I'm listening to.
Well, now you get to be on one.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. I've never been on a podcast before. So.
Well, we're happy to be the debut of you being on a podcast.
Thank you.
What parts of what you all are doing now do you think will stick around once this is completely gone and we're back to being in person? Will there be things in your mind that should stick around as far as connecting, or will it just go back to how it was before?
I think there are a couple things I think will stay around. I think the idea of just connecting with people and saying, how are you? And genuinely meaning, how are you? How are you doing? How are you holding up during quarantine? And even after. I think people are a lot more willing to listen now and just kind of check in on others, which I think is awesome. And I really hope that stays around. I think, especially in a volleyball standpoint, I think the girls will be really able to self-motivate themselves. So I can only do so much motivating through a computer screen. And it's pretty much on them. So they can kind of figure out like, okay, this motivates me, or this, I don't really want to do anything because of this. Or, just really kind of learning yourself and figuring out how you're doing during all of this, I hope it stays around after as well. I've noticed I love to just, go and do as much as I can in one day. And I think people are now realizing like, oh, I can sit down and I can have a meal with my family and it's awesome. We're all talking about our days even though we did nothing. So I just think overall it's just a really nice time for people to slow down and kind of enjoy themselves.